What if, in just a year, some of the world's most popular destinations suddenly refuse to let British citizens in? Imagine planning your dream holiday or business trip, only to find your passport no longer opens the same doors it once did. Global politics, shifting alliances, and rising visa tensions are reshaping how the world views British travellers. From once friendly nations to strategic rivals, major countries are rethinking who they welcome. These changes aren't decades away, they could happen as soon as 2026. Get ready to uncover the 10 countries that may soon ban British citizens altogether. Number 10. Japan. Japan has long been admired by British travellers for its culture, technology, and discipline. Yet future diplomatic and security considerations could reshape that connection by 2026. Experts predict that visa reciprocity concerns, digital border reforms, and diplomatic unease might push Tokyo to reassess its current open-door approach to UK visitors. Following post-Brexit changes, the UK has altered several immigration policies affecting Asian nationals, and Japan may respond with its own adjustments to maintain balance. Government insiders have hinted at broader entry evaluations, focusing on nations whose policies diverge from Japan's standards of cooperation and data sharing. While Japan has historically maintained friendly ties with the UK, its immigration philosophy has always been cautious. The introduction of stricter background screening for foreign visitors highlights Tokyo's desire to enhance border security amid global instability. Analysts suggest that, should political or economic disagreements deepen, the Japanese government might tighten tourist visa access or introduce new verification requirements for British nationals. The move would not be an act of hostility, but rather a reflection of Japan's strategic shift towards self-protection and regulatory parity. Business travelers, students, and cultural exchange participants could all face delays or increased scrutiny as a result. For many Britons, Japan represents a dream destination filled with tradition and innovation, making the possibility of restricted access deeply disappointing. Such a decision would also affect tourism revenue and educational collaborations between universities in both nations. If diplomatic negotiations fail to maintain mutual openness, Japan may join the growing list of countries rethinking entry for UK citizens. By 2026, a once effortless trip to Tokyo could become a regulated journey, signaling how policy balance and international perception now shape even the most historically friendly travel routes. The possibility of British citizens facing travel bans in 2026 highlights how rapidly global politics and diplomacy can shift. What once seemed like stable international relationships are now being tested by new trade agreements, security concerns, and reciprocal visa policies. These potential restrictions serve as a reminder that a powerful passport is no longer a guarantee of global freedom. Each country on this list reflects a different motive, some rooted in political tension, others in security priorities, or calls for equal treatment. Together, they illustrate a world where travel is becoming less about leisure and more about strategy and power. Number 9. South Africa. South Africa has long maintained a friendly travel relationship with the United Kingdom, welcoming millions of British tourists each year. Yet mounting concerns over border control, document fraud, and diplomatic reciprocity could cause major policy changes by 2026. The South African government has tightened its stance on immigration security, aiming to reduce misuse of travel documents and ensure fairness in visa exchanges. British citizens may soon face increased scrutiny, longer approval times, or even temporary restrictions if Pretoria decides to realign its entry requirements to match those of the UK. Such developments reflect South Africa's growing insistence on mutual respect and equal treatment in global travel relations. Officials have voiced dissatisfaction with the complexity and cost of obtaining UK visas, claiming the system disadvantages African applicants. This frustration could fuel retaliatory policies targeting British travellers. The recent introduction of advanced biometric verification and stricter entry data systems gives South Africa the tools to implement new visa rules efficiently. At the same time, internal political pressure to protect national integrity and prevent illegal migration continues to grow. Experts suggest that a combination of reciprocal diplomacy and domestic reform could make the UK one of several Western nations subject to new travel limitations. For British citizens, these potential changes would affect tourism, study abroad programs, and business operations, particularly in Johannesburg and Cape Town. South Africa's scenic attractions, from Kruger National Park to Table Mountain, draw thousands of UK visitors annually, and a visa ban would heavily impact that flow. Travel analysts view this as part of a wider regional trend in Africa, where nations are asserting sovereignty through revised visa frameworks. By 2026, South Africa could signal its independence by enforcing stricter travel barriers against British passport holders. Number 8. Brazil. Brazil's relationship with the United Kingdom has traditionally been stable, built on cultural exchange, tourism, and trade. However, changing global dynamics and visa reciprocity disputes may alter that balance by 2026. The Brazilian government has begun re-evaluating its travel agreements with countries that impose strict entry conditions on its citizens. If the UK maintains or expands its current visa restrictions for South American travellers, Brazil may respond with equivalent or harsher measures against British nationals. Such actions would reflect a growing sense of regional solidarity and political independence within Latin America, where reciprocal travel policies are becoming a symbol of national pride. Brazil's foreign policy has taken a more assertive tone in recent years, emphasizing equality and mutual respect in international relations. Officials have hinted that nations enforcing asymmetrical travel policies could face retaliatory restrictions. With the UK focusing on tightening border controls post-Brexit, British travellers may find themselves caught in a new wave of diplomatic pushback. Analysts believe Brazil's alignment with emerging economies such as China and India strengthens its willingness to challenge Western nations, including the United Kingdom. Should political disagreements escalate, British citizens could face longer visa processes, reduced stay durations, or even temporary bans. For ordinary travellers, this would be a significant setback. Brazil remains one of the most popular destinations for British tourists, drawn to its beaches, rainforests, and vibrant cities like Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo. A policy shift could affect tourism revenue, student exchanges, and business links that depend on open movement. The potential restriction would signal Brazil's determination to protect regional dignity and parity, illustrating how global travel norms are becoming tools of diplomacy. By 2026, visiting Brazil might require far more than just a valid passport and enthusiasm for adventure. Number 7. China. China's relationship with the United Kingdom has grown increasingly complex, marked by trade disputes, political disagreements, and national security concerns. As Beijing tightens its foreign policy stance, experts warn that by 2026, British citizens could face severe travel restrictions or even an outright ban. The UK's criticism of China's human rights record, data practices, and involvement in global conflicts has strained mutual trust. Chinese authorities have responded in recent years with stricter visa requirements, longer screening processes, and closer monitoring of foreign visitors. This pattern suggests a gradual but deliberate shift toward limiting access for nations perceived as antagonistic. China's foreign ministry has consistently emphasized the principle of reciprocity, meaning any perceived diplomatic slight is often met with an equal response. As the UK strengthens alliances with countries critical of Beijing, such as the United States and Japan, Chinese policymakers may retaliate by tightening travel privileges for British nationals. Universities, businesses, and journalists could be affected first, especially those connected to organizations viewed as politically sensitive. China's advanced surveillance infrastructure enables the government to manage entry permissions with high precision, making a selective or full restriction entirely feasible within a short time frame. For British citizens, such a ban would have significant cultural and economic consequences. China is a key destination for education, technology, and manufacturing partnerships, and limiting access would disrupt academic programs and global trade links. Tourism, which once thrived on UK visitors exploring Beijing, Shanghai, and Xi'an, could also decline dramatically. Analysts believe that this move would symbolize a larger geopolitical shift, reflecting how ideological divides increasingly dictate travel and collaboration. By 2026, if current diplomatic trends continue, China may become one of the most significant nations to restrict or suspend British entry altogether. Number 6. Russia. Russia's relationship with the United Kingdom has deteriorated sharply over the past decade, marked by sanctions, espionage disputes, and diplomatic expulsions. These ongoing tensions make Russia one of the most likely nations to restrict or completely ban British citizens by 2026. The Kremlin has consistently applied reciprocal measures to countries imposing sanctions, and given the UK's firm stance on Ukraine and defence policies, a future travel ban would not be unexpected. Officials in Moscow have already hinted at tightening visa access for nations deemed unfriendly, and Britain sits prominently on that list. For Russia, these restrictions serve both political and symbolic purposes. Limiting UK entry would reinforce its narrative of resisting Western interference and asserting independence from global pressure. British journalists, NGOs, and researchers have already faced increasing barriers to travel, signalling the direction future policy could take. Moreover, Russian authorities have strengthened surveillance and border control systems, allowing them to target specific nationalities more efficiently. A complete prohibition or visa freeze for UK citizens could emerge as part of a broader strategy to control foreign influence and retaliate against Western sanctions, particularly if tensions over NATO activities persist. For British citizens, such developments could have lasting effects. Travel for cultural exchange, education, or journalism would become nearly impossible. Business ventures in Moscow and St. Petersburg, already under pressure from financial sanctions, would face further disruption. Tourism, once modest but steady, would vanish entirely. Beyond travel, a ban would symbolize a total diplomatic freeze, with both nations withdrawing cooperation on security, trade, and cultural programs. By 2026, this situation could represent one of the clearest examples of how geopolitical conflict transforms everyday mobility, turning once accessible destinations into politically restricted zones. Number 5. Turkey. Turkey's strategic position between Europe and Asia has always made it a crucial travel and trade destination for British citizens. Yet shifting political alliances and ongoing diplomatic friction could soon alter this relationship. Ankara's evolving ties with Russia and its cautious stance toward Western powers have raised speculation that by 2026, Turkey may introduce stricter visa controls or temporary entry bans for UK travellers. Disputes over NATO operations, arms sales, and the UK's involvement in regional policies have created waves of mistrust that Turkish officials could address through reciprocal travel restrictions. Over the past few years, Turkey has increased efforts to protect its national security by reviewing who enters its borders and for what purpose. While tourism remains vital to its economy, the government has demonstrated that political motives can outweigh economic interests. Analysts believe that any diplomatic standoff, especially involving defense cooperation or intelligence sharing, might directly impact travel freedoms. British citizens have long benefited from simplified e-visa systems, but those privileges could vanish if Ankara perceives continued interference in regional matters. Such changes would align with Turkey's recent pattern of asserting sovereignty through controlled access, a trend mirrored in its dealings with other Western countries. For British travellers, the implications would be significant. Millions visit Turkey each year for holidays and business, drawn by its cultural heritage and affordable resorts. A potential restriction would disrupt not only tourism, but also trade relations and property investments. The move would symbolize a wider realignment, showing Turkey's willingness to prioritize political autonomy over traditional partnerships. Experts warn that this situation reflects a broader global shift, where even long-standing allies can impose barriers when national interests outweigh historical friendships. By 2026, Turkey might indeed reconsider its open-door policy toward the UK. Number 4. Qatar. Qatar has experienced a rapid transformation over the past decade, evolving into a hub for international investment, sports, and tourism. However, recent tensions with Western nations, including the United Kingdom, hint at possible restrictions ahead. Disagreements over labor rights, media criticism, and political alignment could lead Qatari authorities to tighten entry conditions for British citizens by 2026. The post-World Cup period has seen Doha reassessing its diplomatic partnerships, focusing more on nations that maintain neutral or supportive stances toward its domestic policies. As the UK continues to highlight Qatar's human rights record, officials may interpret this as interference, prompting a shift in travel policy. Qatar's government has shown that it values loyalty and discretion from its partners, and criticism often carries tangible consequences. British citizens currently benefit from relatively easy visa on arrival access, but that privilege could vanish if relations worsen. Analysts suggest that the Gulf nation may respond with selective restrictions on journalists, human rights advocates, or NGOs linked to the UK. Economic analysts also predict that any travel tightening would ripple through aviation and construction sectors, where British firms have substantial interests. This evolving environment reflects Qatar's determination to assert political independence and national image control, even if it means limiting entry from key allies. For British travellers, such a move would symbolise a significant diplomatic cooling. Tourism, business, and even transit routes could be affected, as Qatar Airways remains a major carrier connecting the UK to Asia and Africa. The potential restrictions would underscore the growing unpredictability of global diplomacy, where alliances can shift with public opinion and policy criticism. If tensions persist, by 2026 Qatar might no longer welcome British passport holders as freely as it once did, altering the Gulf's travel landscape dramatically. Number 3. India. India and the United Kingdom share deep historical and cultural ties, yet tensions over visa reciprocity, immigration policies, and political statements could drive a sharp divide by 2026. Indian officials have repeatedly voiced frustration over the UK's restrictive visa process for skilled workers and students, while British lawmakers have raised issues regarding human rights and regional governance. These contrasting positions have strained dialogue between both governments. If diplomatic discussions fail to balance these disagreements, India may introduce new measures that limit or suspend entry for British citizens, signalling a dramatic recalibration in bilateral relations. Behind this potential shift lies a sense of national assertion. India's global influence has grown rapidly, and policymakers are determined to project equality in international relations. The government has emphasized fair treatment for its citizens abroad, and may respond firmly to any perceived imbalance in UK immigration laws. Travel analysts note that India's updated e-visa and biometric systems could easily be modified to restrict access from specific nations. Such a decision would likely be justified under the banner of sovereign parity and mutual respect, reflecting India's push to establish itself as a global power, with independent policies rather than a post-colonial partner. For British citizens, this scenario would represent more than just tightened visa procedures. Many have familial, educational, and business connections spanning generations, making an entry restriction both personal and symbolic. The tourism sector, which thrives on UK visitors, could face setbacks, while bilateral trade agreements might experience renewed tension. The idea of the world's largest democracy imposing limits on British travellers underscores how sensitive modern diplomacy has become. As both nations navigate changing political landscapes, the once stable bond could face unexpected barriers that reshape travel, cooperation, and cultural exchange by 2026. Number 2. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's relationship with the United Kingdom has always been rooted in strategic cooperation, trade, and defense agreements. But growing diplomatic friction could reshape that dynamic by 2026. Recent disagreements over human rights concerns, arms deals, and regional policies have created visible tension between London and Riyadh. Saudi authorities have already signaled a desire to reassess entry privileges for nations perceived as critical of their domestic policies. If these signals develop into formal restrictions, British citizens could soon face tougher visa requirements or outright denials for business and leisure travel. The shift would mark a significant departure from the current state of controlled openness. Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 reforms have expanded tourism and foreign investment, yet officials have emphasized prioritizing visitors who align with the kingdom's political and cultural values. The UK's repeated criticism of certain Saudi practices has not gone unnoticed, and analysts suggest that retaliatory policy changes are plausible. Moreover, Saudi Arabia's evolving alliances, particularly its growing partnership with Asian and Middle Eastern nations, could further distance its stance from Western interests, including Britain's. Such a divergence would have wide-reaching effects on trade discussions, energy contracts, and defense cooperation. For British travellers, a possible ban would not just be a travel inconvenience, but a symbolic blow to one of the UK's most economically significant relationships in the Gulf. Thousands of professionals, engineers, and educators currently working in Saudi Arabia might face uncertainty about their future access. Tourism projects like Neom and Al Ula, once promoted to attract UK visitors, could restrict participation from British firms. Experts warn that this growing strain illustrates how rapidly political criticism and diplomatic recalibration can alter travel privileges. If conditions continue to deteriorate, Saudi Arabia may indeed close its doors to UK citizens by 2026. Number 1. United States. The United States has long been regarded as one of Britain's closest allies, yet growing political and immigration tensions suggest that by 2026, this relationship could face serious strain. Following the shifting landscape of post-Brexit trade agreements and border controls, both nations have begun reassessing visa policies and entry rights. Washington's recent push for tighter border security and revised visa waiver programs may soon impact UK travellers directly. British citizens, once able to enter the United States with minimal restrictions, might soon face enhanced background checks, extended processing times, or even temporary suspensions for certain travel categories. The roots of this potential shift lie in a complex blend of security priorities, diplomatic friction, and policy reciprocity. As the UK strengthens ties with nations that occasionally oppose American foreign objectives, policymakers in Washington could adopt stricter stances toward British travellers. New legislation being debated aims to heighten scrutiny for visitors from countries with changing data-sharing policies, and the UK's evolving digital border system may trigger reciprocal responses. These measures, while framed around national security, could inadvertently complicate travel for millions of tourists, students, and business professionals who rely on smooth transatlantic mobility. For many Britons, this possible restriction feels almost unthinkable, yet experts argue the signals are already visible. Increasing visa fees, longer interview backlogs, and evolving political rhetoric suggest the open-door era may be closing. Travel analysts warn that these developments could affect tourism revenue, family reunions, and academic exchanges between both nations. The idea of a British passport holder facing refusal at a US entry point highlights a dramatic shift in global movement norms. While not officially confirmed, the prospect of a ban in 2026 serves as a stark reminder of how swiftly geopolitical currents can reshape even the strongest alliances. For millions of British travellers, professionals, and students, the coming years may demand greater awareness and adaptability. Staying informed about changing regulations will be essential. The next wave of international policy could reshape not just how people move, but how nations perceive one another. What was once an effortless border crossing may soon require months of planning and diplomatic patience. These shifts remind us that in a globally connected world, even the smallest political decision can ripple across borders and change everyday lives. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, hit like to support the channel, and subscribe for more global updates that affect travelers worldwide. Share your thoughts in the comments. Which of these possible bans surprised you most? And before your next trip, check out our other videos on upcoming visa changes and international travel forecasts so you're always one step ahead.